Here's your last installment of our position breakdowns as we head into Saturday's spring game. My hair does not usually look this good, but I'm a fortunate recipient of the win.
You
look
like Bruno Mars a little bit.
Yeah, something like that. Outside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center with Doug Maurice, Bill Landis. Now we're talking about defensive line. A lot of good players on the defensive line. A really good one to replace. You are the interior line expert. We'll start with you. What do you think you envision? How are they going to replace Mike Bennett?
Well, that's a big question. Who's going to replace Mike Bennett? It's been asked a lot. Adolphus Washington is going to replace Mike Bennett. It's who's going to replace Adolphus Washington. It should be the question that's being asked because they don't have a nose guard now. Part of the reason that Michael Bennett was so good last year is because Adolphus Washington was really good at taking on double teams in the middle of that defensive line. He got Mike Bennett in space, and Bennett, if you saw over the last 7 or 8 games of the year, from the Michigan State game on, really, he was getting the back. He was blowing up plays. I think he had 6 sacks over those last few games. Now Adolphus Washington is that guy, but the question is, do they have someone next to him who can take on those double teams so that Adolphus Washington can get in space and use that big body and his athleticism to get in quarterbacks' faces and rush the passer? And that's the big adjustment for him. Larry Johnson talked about it last week, is Adolphus Washington has to get used to rushing the passer again. It's something he really hasn't had to do. Didn't have to do it last year because he was just kind of a plug in the middle of the defensive line and a run stuffer. Now he's going to get out in space and get after guys, so that's a big adjustment for him.
Well, it's good news about Adolphus Washington is he was the diesel in high school. I mean, that guy was a 5-star pass rushing freak that people thought was going to be one of the best players in college football eventually, so he has that versatility. To be able to plug the middle, though, and take that spot, Doug, do you think Tommy Shutt has what it takes to do that?
I don't know. I mean, I think he's going to be pushed by younger guys. Tommy Shutt is a guy who was a pretty big-time recruit coming here. He said when we talked to him that he really hasn't had the career that he wanted to have. He thinks he has some some ground to gain. This is his chance. This is his chance. He has some younger guys like Tracy Sprinkle, Donovan Munger, Michael Hill, who could fit in there as well. But it's going to be his shot at it first. And I think he might have the skills to be that guy to, take up blockers so that other guys can get free. But I don't think it's a sure thing. I think it's always cool when guys late in their careers get it, like Darryl Baldwin last year. When guys who maybe haven't done what they wanted to do finally get a shot and seize the day. But it's not a guarantee. And there are, I think, enough other options in there that if he doesn't play as well as he could play, I think other guys will push him. So I'm not, in my mind, he doesn't have that locked up yet. He certainly has the ability to lock it up, but I do think guys like Michael Hill are still going to try to make a name for themselves inside.
So now we'll go to the outside a little bit. Everybody knows about Joey Bosa. If you don't, then I'm good, right? What about the other side, Bill? How's Ohio State going to approach the outside ends? Like, obviously, they're going to have one star in Bosa, but how are they going to go on the other outside?
Urban Meyer said on Monday that it's basically Tyquan Lewis's job to lose. At least that's the vibe that I got. There's some other guys there with Jalen Holmes and Sam Hubbard. I think the ideal situation would be some kind of rotation of all those guys. I don't think you want to have just Tyquan Lewis out there on every snap. And they kind of got that a little bit last year with Steve Miller was a starter. Then Rashad Frazier came in and gave him some good plays last year. I think the more rotation you can get, even if you can give Bosa a couple of rests, I mean, he's a guy who's played a lot of snaps. He's been playing since he was a freshman. I think they have a pretty good rotation. Sam Hubbard, I mean, if you go by what people say about him, he's awesome. He's the best player in America. I don't know. I mean, we don't know.
Let him talk about.
I know. I'll let Doug get into him, but I don't know how good Sam Hubbard can be, but if he's as good as everyone says he is, I think they have a pretty good rotation there opposite Bosa, that other defensive end spot.
Urban was asked Monday about how he envisions Bosa taking the next step. What do you envision is a realistic expectation for him in his, what I think, final year? And, of course, the depth on the defensive end. I want to give you a forum to talk about Sam Hubbard.
Because Sam Hubbard could be the next Joey Bosa. Yeah. Joey Bosa, I mean, Urban Meyer said it, should try to what's out there is to be the best defensive end in America. He had 13.5 sacks last year. He actually didn't have quite as many at the end of the season. He was like, the record is 14, and he was like set up to get it, and he didn't get it. I mean, I think a 15-sack season is out there for him, and if he does that, he'll end up, I think, as the all-time leading sacker at Ohio State for a career. So there are things out there. He felt like early, it was mostly early last season, but that early he got out of position a little bit. I think he was chasing plays rather than letting plays come to him. He thought he missed maybe 5 or 6 sacks. Larry Johnson, the defensive line coach, said that. So if he can have the confidence that other guys are going to do their job, he can just stay in his spot, let quarterbacks get flushed by other guys, roll his way, that kind of thing. I think he even can have a bigger year. 13.5 sacks is a lot of sacks. I don't think he's going to have 20, but I think he can do even more, and I think he's going to be helped. And now I'm going to start talking about Sam Hubbard. They can be more dynamic at the opposite end spot. Last year, what everybody thought it was going to be was Joey Bosa and Noah Spence. We know that didn't work out. Rashad Frazier and Steve Miller did a very good job as seniors filling in that spot. They weren't dynamic. You know, they were solid, I think. It wasn't like there was a hole in the defense there. But I think Jalen Holmes, Tyquan Lewis, Sam Hubbard have a chance to be a little more of a threat rushing the passer, which only is going to make Adolphus Washington and Joey Bosa better. So I think it's really interesting. If Tyquan Lewis is locking up that job, he must be playing really well, because I think Jalen Holmes and Sam Hubbard both have a lot of potential.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to hear that Tyquan Lewis was, especially because I think he's been limited a little bit too, that he's been able to lock that up or step ahead and at least be the guy in position. So that's it for our previews of the breakdowns. Do you have any plans on Saturday?
Are you going to a concert?
I wish I never asked that. That's painful. We'll be at the spring game, full coverage, videos, everything from Ohio Stadium headed in the summer. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for reading along throughout the spring and throughout last season. And, you know, there's a lot of early departures on this Ohio State football team, but we're not going anywhere. So stay tuned on Saturday. Thanks so much, and have a great weekend.